Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the 18th Annual Credit Suisse Asian Investment Conference. Thank you for accepting our invitation and for being here today. It's been a fascinating year in terms of investment themes since we last met. In one of its year-end market reviews, the Wall Street Journal described 2014 as a year of market surprises, stating that most economic forecasts for the year were inaccurate. Well, I think that's a pretty accurate description of exactly what happened. Financial markets across the world have seen a string of macro and political events that have influenced asset prices and impacted portfolios. At the beginning of 2014, economists across the board expected interest rates to increase. But 1 year later, rates were still at historically low levels, and it's only now, and only in some markets, that they are beginning to rise. Geopolitics also continued to be a factor that investors needed to be wary of. The Ukraine crisis weighed heavily on European economies, while conflicts in parts of the Middle East added to the climate of uncertainty, particularly in commodity prices. Additionally, the ongoing Greek debt negotiations fueled fresh concerns about the possible destabilization of Europe's monetary union. Central banks around the world also continue to be active in financial markets. While the U.S. ended quantitative easing in October 2014, the Europeans have just started. While in Switzerland, our own home market, foreign exchange rates saw a dramatic move after the Swiss National Bank discontinued the Swiss euro peg and introduced negative short-term interest rates. And looking at Asia, we've seen concerted economic and political reforms in China, the election of a new reformist government in India and Indonesia, and a fall in rates from India to China to South Korea. All these developments have created volatility in asset markets and are likely to have a significant impact on Asian economies going forward. Another market event that most experts did not anticipate was a sharp decline in energy prices and other commodities in the fourth quarter of last year. While this generally had a stimulating effect on the global economy, it negatively impacted the economies of commodity exporting nations and investments in those countries, as well as companies in this sector, though in recent weeks we have started to see signs of a stabilization in energy prices. What this all means for the rest of this year is unclear. A resurgent stock market in some places shows that confidence is clearly returning, but in other markets, leverage is low and there's lack of conviction. And for some investors, memories of mispriced credit, excessive valuations, and other ingredients of a bubble are still fresh. So the question now being posed is, where does real value lie, and how can investors and companies find it? At this year's conference, we will again try to shed some light on where the forces at play in the market will take us. We're delighted to be able to welcome some of the most influential and insightful leaders in their fields, some of whom have had a central role in economic, political, and strategic decision-making, and who can offer us some unrivaled insights into the possible direction that policymaking and markets are heading. Among them, José Manuel Barroso, former President of the European Commission and former Prime Minister of Portugal, who's sitting with us this morning. He will discuss the outlook for Europe, which continues to grapple with implementing structural economic reforms, but the financial markets, at least for now, are optimistic as they enjoy the effects of QE. From the U.S., Robert J. Shiller, 2013 Nobel laureate in economics and one of the most astute market analysts of our time, will offer his perspective on how markets are likely to perform in the long term, using his renowned insights into how assets are priced, and more intriguingly, what hand behavioral finance plays in determining the performance of securities. From China, it's an honor to welcome Professor Liu Mingkang, distinguished fellow at the Fung Global Institute and former chairman of the China Banking Regulatory Commission. He will deliver a keynote address on new governance in China, as China embarks on a journey to reform both political and investment markets. Also here with us this morning is Richard W. Fisher, who has just stepped down as president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. Well known as an inflation hawk, he has long called for the U.S. Central Bank to start raising interest rates again and for a withdrawal of Fed stimulus. While QE has now ended and markets are expecting an increase in rates, Mr. Fisher will tell us whether enough is being done. From India, we are joined by Dr. D.V. Subbarao, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of India who will share with us his view of how the world's largest democracy will fare under the new government, and detail for us the monumental economic and political changes taking place. Ladies and gentlemen, we're also delighted to be able to welcome to this year's conference one of the premier experts in the field of geopolitics, who has been at the sharp end of dealing with crisis and conflict globally. Anders Fogh Rasmussen, former Secretary General of NATO and the former Prime Minister of Denmark. He will identify the next potential hotspots around the world and possible black swan events and explain why it's important for investors to consider them. We are honored to have so many of these distinguished thought leaders with us here at the AIC. As many of you know, it's also a tradition at the AIC to find some alternative perspectives, which may not always be even market or economy related, but speaking to a trend, a shift in sentiment, a new approach that could inform future direction of economies or society. This time, we hope to shed some light on a potential market for the future, when we will be joined for the first time at the AIC by an astronaut, Dave McKay, one of the pilots from Virgin Galactic, who will speak about the possibilities that are being opened up by the prospect of commercial space travel. Clearly, we've seen some setbacks in the journey to making space tourism a reality, but this is also a trend that is not going to disappear quickly, and I'm looking forward to learning more about this fascinating subject. I hope you'll find the week ahead very insightful and potentially also profitable. I'm looking forward to many of the sessions that are lined up for the week and also to meeting many of you in the days ahead.